Jerome Robbins, originally named Jerome Wilson Rubinowitz, was born in New York on October 11, 1918. Robbins decided to change his last name because Rubinowitz translated to son of a rabbi, which implied that he was son of an immigrant. Later, his family moved to Weehawken, New Jersey, where he was raised. Jerome Robbins originally wanted to major in chemistry at New York University. The Depression deprived him of a college education, which led him to discovering his passion for dance. He became a director and a choreographer, and he choreographed many works for movies, theaters, and television. Many of his works were influenced with central themes about the nature of communities such as gang, villages, tribes, immature groups of friends, and loose urban societies. Robbins was raised in a small community in New Jersey, which could have influenced the themes he chose for his works. Jerome Robbins had a few rough patches in his life. He was harassed by the FBI and was called in to testify before the Un-American Activities Committee in a special New York session at the U.S. Courthouse on May 5, 1953. Spectators grilled him about his views on the Communist Party, which he was once a part of. Ed Sullivan, who was famous for hosting a television show, canceled his contract with Robbins because of this and later threatened that he would expose him as a homosexual if he didn't list names of the people who were involved. It was a rumor that Jerome Robbins was bisexual and he had a relationship with Montgomery Clift. Robbins began to name the three of the members in fear of his sexuality exposure. Although his career didn't suffer, he was never on good terms with Zero Mostel, Jack Guilford, and his wife Madeline. He never forgave himself for this and regretted it throughout his career.
Jerome Robbins had a very distinct artistic vision. His vision of classical ballet and contemporary dance encompassed a combination with other theater forms in order to experiment and achieve a wider horizon. He was committed, dedicated, and passionate about every scene or dance he was working on. Jerome Robbins was known for capturing the essence of an age. It was considered the Robbins signature. He portrayed this in each and every project he was involved in, with choreography from musicals to films. Jerome Robbins contributed diversity in everything he has produced. Throughout his career, Robbins combined theatrical savvy with an unerring sense of movement to create potent, moving panoramas. Here's a short clips of his creations.
Just think lovely, wonderful thoughts. And up together! I'm sweet, oh, I'm sweet! I'm flying. Way up high, suddenly, here am I.
As a choreographer, Jerome Robbins has influenced and taught many different dancers throughout his established Broadway shows. For example, in Fancy Free, Robbins' first ballet for a ballet company, he taught dancers like John Kriza and Harold Lang. Both Harold Lang and John Kriza were very well-known ballet dancers of the American Ballet Theatre who worked under some of the same choreographers. There was George Balanchine, Agnes de Mille, and Leonide Massine. Not only did Jerome Robbins dancers learn from him, but the choreographer of Pajama Game, Bob Fosse, gained a lot of insight by working on set with him. As a perfectionist, Robbins would continuously tweak Fosse's creations, and rather than being insulted, Fosse stated, "I learned more in a couple of hours of watching him than I had learned previously in my whole life." In Jerome Robbins' Broadway show, West Side Story, Rita Moreno, who played Anita, said Jerome Robbins was terrifying yet inspiring. She stated in an interview that Jerry would humiliate the dancers, and yet find a way to continue to inspire them. In these two clips, Rita Moreno describes in further detail what it was like to work with Jerome Robbins.
And there were many memories of it, meeting Jerome Robbins, who was a genius, an absolute genius. I don't think I've ever worked with a genius before, or since, really. And, well, I did it as an actress with Marlon Brando. But he was astonishing because he did something that no one ever did. He choreographed for character. The steps that Anita did in West Side Story were specifically for Anita. No one else in that play could have done those steps because they were specifically Anita-type steps. That's how he choreographed. He was a genius. And I remember a wonderful memory of that was Stanley Donen came in to help him with the camera work. Because Jerry, this was his very first film, and Stanley came in with his viewfinder to help Jerry Robbins put together the shots for The Small House of Uncle Thomas. And they worked on that together all through rehearsals. Those rehearsals must have taken, oh my God, at least a couple months, just for that one number. And it was Stanley Donen who really saw Jerry through the paces of someone who never had a finder in his hand in his whole life. Robert Wise is the most gentle, tender, loving, patient man in the world. Jerome Robbins was cut from another piece of cloth entirely. He was not gentle, he was not tender, he had a vicious temper. He was extremely hard on the people he worked with. He was really hard. He could smell a victim a mile away. And he really could, as only sadistic people can be. But I would drop anything right now to work with him again. Well, he was like nobody else in the world. And when you pleased him, you felt so on top of the world. It was very hard to please him. But he had a very mean streak. And he was famous for that.
Jerome Robbins has many famous work, but the most popular one is West Side Story. The West Side Story is a melodramatic musical that won 21 different awards, such as Golden Globe and many different Academy Awards. This project is one of the most famous of all the contemporary dances. It has impacted contemporary dances so heavily by incorporating culture and how people were living. It has been reworked by many choreographers like Arthur Lawrence, who revived the Broadway show in 2009. Here is a famous scene from the original movie West Side Story.
Tony!
Jerome Robbins studied a range of dance styles including ballet, modern, Spanish, Oriental, and interpretive. He then built a new style from classical and modern parts. He was much like Ruth and Dennis, who also studied a lot of different dance styles, such as Egyptian and Indian dances. She also built her own new style from that. He had created a style of ballet that was drawn from American life, and he was notorious for introducing a new approach to dance. From ballet to musical theater, Jerome Robbins as a choreographer was creating works to the present and future. One of his works was Fancy Free. This is the dance that tells a story about American sailors' life. The similarity between Fancy Free and Cakewalk in the 19th is that they both tell a story about American life. In both dances, they are wearing familiar clothing. In Fancy Free, they are wearing sailor costumes and dresses for women. In Cakewalk, they wore long ruffled dresses with hoops in them, and the men had on high hats, long split-tailed coats, and some of them used walking sticks. Jerome Robbins was performing and choreographing in ballet theater or Broadway. Fancy Free was a classical dance form demanding grace and precision of movement that is performed in the theater. It was danced by three men that act as a sailor and a woman that impressed them. There was a pantomime in the dance when a sailor tries to impress the woman with his military exploits. There are two similarities between Jerome Robbins' works in Broadway and the Greek theater. Both of them were performed in a theater and have a pantomime version of their dance. Unlike Roman pantomime, ancient Greece pantomime was danced by three people. Jerome Robbins also uses this idea of many dancers in his pantomimes.
He passed away on July 29, 1998 due to a stroke. He lapsed into a coma and was later taken home to Manhattan where he died. His legacy living on through many of his work. Some of them led to movies and full TV shows like Fancy Free and The West Side Story. He influenced the rise of American ballet, which helped Broadway become what it is today.